Welcome to the Renegade Health Boss Podcast, where we push the boundaries of what's possible in health and wellness. I'm your host, Heather Gray, a certified functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and certified bioenergetic practitioner. And each week we dive deep into the world of physical, mental, spiritual health, biohacking, relationships. But we're not just talking about the basics. I'm bringing you conversations with the true renegades, experts who are challenging the status quo in their fields, breaking barriers, and uncovering the real truth behind what it takes to live an incredible, joy-filled, and optimized life. If you're ready to step out of the ordinary and step into a life of extraordinary health and happiness, you're in the right place. Let's get started on this journey to becoming your own Renegade Health Boss. Before we jump in, let's hear a word from our sponsor.
Dr. Nathan Bryan here with our N101 nitric oxide orally disintegrating tablet. Nitric oxide is a gas, so how do we deliver a bioactive gas in a solid dose form? We've created a solid dose form of bioactive gas. This lozenge, which is designed to have a resident time of 5 to 6 minutes. So you take this lozenge, you put it in your mouth, don't chew it, don't swallow it. Let it dissolve. As it's dissolving, it's releasing a certain amount of nitric oxide over a certain period of time. And that release of nitric oxide is designed to recapitulate nitric oxide production and nitric oxide signaling. So if your body can't make nitric oxide for whatever reason, this product delivers it for you. But more importantly, the technology in this lozenge recouples the NOS enzyme, so we improve endothelial function. We improve the body's ability to make nitric oxide on its own. And because it's an orally disintegrating tablet that sits on the top of the tongue and moves around, it's killing the bad bacteria. It's maintaining the diversity of the oral microbiome. We're improving the nitrate-reducing bacteria, so we're improving the oral microbiome. So this product generates nitric oxide and improves the body's ability to make nitric oxide through both pathways, endothelial nitric oxide production through restoration of the oral microbiome. There's no other product on the market that does what this product does. This is an orally disintegrating tablet that releases nitric oxide. We can quantify it, we can detect it, we can verify it. So if your body can't make nitric oxide, we do it for you. N101 activating lozenges. Get it today.
Yay! Let's welcome Dr. Nasha to the show. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thanks. This is so great. It's been a long time coming. I got to meet you. I've been knowing of you for a long time, but I got to finally meet you in person at the Dragonfly event in the fall of 2023. And we've been trying to get this party together for a while. So I'm really grateful to be here with you and your tribe.
Absolutely. I keep seeing you through the different, social media channels, and I'm like, oh, I got to reach back out to her. Oh, like it was just this beautiful, like, I got to have you, Dr. Nasha. Because I just know that, your fellow warrior woman, putting the truth out into the world, whether it's about cancer or Lyme or co-infections or all the things, right? We're bringing that hope to the world. And so I see you, sister. And that's why I was like, I have to have you on the show. Mm-hmm. But let's dive in. Let's dive in. What makes you tick? What brought you to be a doctor, and how did you come about to talking about the co-infection and cancer topic that we're going to dive in deeper later on?
Yeah. Well, I think probably like you probably didn't get into Lyme. You thought, well, that just seems like an interesting conversation. Let's look into this. It's a pain to purpose story, right? The hero's journey type of story of something that can be seen as so intolerable or incurable or unsurvivable to lead you into saying, well, I better figure the F out what's going on here. And my patients call it SYAU, Save Your Ass University is what they call this. And I feel like I've got a couple of doctorates from that university. And I'm sure you and your listeners can relate. You probably have multiple degrees in this environment as well. But I was 19. I had years and years, decades, probably my entire life of really weird health issues. I was kind of born with health issues, had lots of digestive stuff as a little kid. I was allergic to everything. Started my period, I was 9 years old. Back in the 1970s, that was not normal nor common. Unfortunately, it's common, still not normal today. Things like that. I just had all these things: IBS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, endometriosis, rheumatoid arthritis, Hashimoto's thyroiditis, lots and lots of weird, like skin fungal, co-infection-y type of things. just you name it. And so by the time I was 19 and in and out of the ER for about 6 months, they just kept thinking it was more of the same. Like, here's another script pad to deal with the anxiety you're dealing with, or here's another script pad for your inflammation and pain patterns. Here's another script pad for the fungal infections or whatever, just over and over. The layer cake of that finally landed me in the hospital just a couple weeks shy of my 20th birthday with what they finally figured out, because they finally stopped treating me like a histrionic teenager and started actually looking at what the hell was going on, since none of the things they were doing was working. Was they realized I was an end stage organ failure secondary to stage 4 ovarian cancer. So there begins my journey.
Holy shit.
Kind of like, I know, right. So I kind of think of it like life before cancer, like my own version of BC, and life after cancer. Gosh. Yeah. And so there it's been. So I am now 52 and a half years old at the time of this recording, maybe a little bit past the halfway point now, coming on to the 53rd year of my life, and did not expect, as the doctors told me, didn't expect to even see the end of the year of my of the 20th year on this planet. So here we are all this time later. I've been learning a few things for myself and applying it to tens of thousands of patients, and directly, and hundreds of thousands of patients indirectly, through a lot of the different ways I do things in the world today. But yeah, that's why I'm here. That's why I'm learning along with you and your tribe every day what it is we don't know. I mean, I feel like I learn something new every single day and every single week and every single month. And I'm sure you are in the same category.
110%. And thank you. What a story. Like, there were so many similarities and correlations on our path. Mine just happened to be Lyme disease. Yours was cancer. I start off my story with, I was basically born full of shit, right? A constipated toddler that nobody was trying to figure out why they were constipated. Just, stool softeners, nasty, thick oils, I had a lot of early childhood trauma that kind of triggered a lot of that stuff off, so what was it for you that kind of set you up with the cancer and the other stuff? Like, where do you think the beginnings of yours started?
Man, you just gave me chills, because I'm pretty sure that we definitely have like sisters from another mister or soul tribe here. The pediatrician told my mom that me pooping once a month was just my pattern.
Oh my God, that man should be.
He should be stuffed with shit and see what that feels like. And so
once a month.
I know.
Oh,
yeah. And so it's like that poor, I'm the first grandchild in the whole origin. So no one has there's no manual that comes with that. The first child in this environment. I'm born into extreme trauma, toxicity. I mean, you talk about adverse childhood events. Your listeners, if they don't know about the adverse childhood event score, this is a question, a 10-part question of things you were exposed to before the age of 10. And as such, the more exposures you have before the age of 10, the higher your incidence of severe chronic illness, even cancers, mental health, stress resilience,
autoimmune.
Yeah, they just they weave a certain neural pathway of how you respond to the world around you, how you absorb those signals, and how you put those signals out. And that could be from the immune system to the emotional, everything. So you mentioned your trauma. I was a 10 out of 10 on the ACE score trauma. So a ton of trauma.
Ooh, I need to take the test again. I don't remember what I scored.
But what you're describing is I would guess you're definitely over a 3. So anything higher than 3, you really have to go and do your work, guys. If you take that score for yourself, please know that you have a lot of unraveling and rewiring of your biology to rewrite your biography. And so that's where it started. I somehow, at the moment the doctors told me there was no way, in less than 3 months to live, and that they couldn't even give me a single dose of chemo. I had a full bowel blockage. I was in end-stage organ failure. There was no offerings of treatment. Somehow, a little spark inside of me said, I got to learn why. I didn't expect to beat it. I just wanted to learn. So the first book I picked up off the shelf after leaving the second opinion on what was going on with me was a book by some crazy guy I'd never heard of back in 1991, which was a man by the name of Dr. Deepak Chopra.
I was wondering where you were going with
Right. You were like, today he's like a household name. Back in 1991, not so much, especially in Podunk, small town, Durango, Colorado.
Oh, you're from Durango.
Yeah. Well, I was from Kansas, but I went to college. And so as my sophomore year of college, I was diagnosed with cancer. And that's this book, just Quantum Healing, was just that for me. It helped illuminate the why so much. It helped me understand constructs of belief. It helped me understand exposures like negligence, poverty, trauma, addiction, violence, all the things that allowed, all of those things that led up to that moment, to understand that my body was literally doing the best she could to just keep me alive. But she always thought she was running from a saber-toothed tiger, which in the cancering space or in the proper immune functioning space, high stress depletes your resilience big time. So you become just a sponge for even more toxicity and more trauma and more crazy ass people who like find your inner compass and I had a therapist who once told me, she's like, it's like you have a primordial tear and they all smell fresh blood, right? It's like every nuck and butts person on the planet comes and finds you. Does that resonate?
Yes, 110%. I have done so much severing over the past years, and two of them were both my parents. Like, both your parents are your biggest bullies in your life. Yeah. Like, at some point you've got to say bye-bye.
Well, that's funny you mentioned, because I had a bowel blockage, I had to fast from food because every time I ate, it caused excruciating, incapacitating pain, but also made me throw up. And I was so backed up at that time that I was literally throwing up fecal matter. TMI, I know, but the important part of the story is the other fast I had to take to save my life, which was what I called the family fast. Mm-hmm. So that was the other, like, I could not heal from the soil in which I got sick. So I had to create a whole new environment. And it was no wonder that I left it a week after high school. I moved to another state to start my life. 6 months after that, exactly, like a few bit of time after that, my mom moved to where I was to help me get in-state residency, which seemed like a good idea after I'd had a little separation, but it was immediate, like what came in, the dynamic there. Suddenly I'm like, I just took the crap with me.
Right.
The next zip code.
No matter where you are, there you are. Where you go, there you are.
Exactly. But this is where the resonance between cancer, infections, mold toxicity, even allergicity. So like allergic reactions, hyperreactivity, mast cell, processes, all of these things are secondary to kind of a nervous system that's revving in hyperdrive of constant, like run from the saber-toothed tiger, sympathetic nervous system push, as well as when you're in that place, your immune system goes off track. It's like we just drop. And so you become so vulnerable to any of the things. So I'd already had a long collection of autoimmunity thanks to the traumas. And then, and I found out later a lot of co-infections that decided to pollinate the garden as well. And then the cancer just was right for the expression. We all have cancer all the time. All of us do. And so for me, in my continuum, it expressed in the cancer environment. In your continuum, it expressed in Lyme, and somebody else's continuum, it might express in addictions or mental illness, and somebody else's it might express as a severe digestive disorder. What I want people to hear here is there's no one cause and one effect, but there are a cumulative buildup of things that take away your resilience. And that's what I was contending with. And from the sound of it, Heather, what you've contended with, and probably many of your listeners as well.
Oh, 110%. So bringing that in there, because not only is it not just one cause, and one thing you're dealing with, it also means that there's not just treatment that you focus on, right? Exactly. Like that's the thing I can scream from the top of the mountain, because we try to treat cancer. I got cancer, we do chemo and radiation. I got Lyme, I go on long-term antibiotics, and they are missing like 75% of the healing puzzle, right? Then they wonder why they relapse, and and still even Lyme literate doctors are still really focused on treatment, and it breaks my heart. So I'm glad that you brought that holistic approach to this, right?
Well, it's interesting because I never really quite thought about it that way, but you're right. I mean, in my world, I'm so accustomed to people like, here's the hammer, here's the nail, here's the hammer, here's the tumor, here's the target, here's the treatment. It's the same thing. It's like, it's ubiquitous across all professions. And so, one thing I always hear from my colleagues are like, oh gosh, I can never treat cancer. It's so hard. It's so scary. It's so overwhelming. And I was telling you before this, I actually checked in with you to make sure I could have this conversation in a way that's hopefully not a trigger warning to be had. But I have probably said 1,000 times over my career, man, in some ways it's easier to treat cancer than Lyme, because at least in my world, there's sort of this sort of starting and ending point. And you spoke to that really beautifully before this, but it's like, you'd think in the cancer world, this would be worse, but in the Lyme world or the mold toxicity world, or even some of these chronic, maybe like Epstein-Barr world, the amount of gaslighting that happens to that population, to that community of people telling you it's all in your head, you're crazy, or there's really nothing wrong with you, so I don't know why you keep showing up here again and again. At least with cancer, it's sort of like all alarms are going off.
I know, like, right? People show up with meals and offer to help. And Lyme disease, there's nothing. There's crickets. You
don't have like walks for Lyme disease or run for the cure.
We're starting
to. Are you? Okay. Yeah. Well, in some ways that could be like, it's a good idea. I mean, like the Susan G. Komen started out this beautiful idea of one woman's story, lost her life to this, her family, like her legacy was that beautiful thought process, but it got bastardized over time.
Absolutely.
Now it's just a money maker for a machine that takes us nowhere. So my hope is that Lyme awareness.
That's going to piss some people off, but I know,
and I don't care.
I'm glad you went there though.
Right. But I'm 30 some years into this and I've never seen a fucking ribbon save anyone's life. And so excuse my French, but it bums me out because we're aware. What are we going to do differently? That's what I want. That's when I get up on my soapbox. So I really hope the Lyme community does not fall victim to the bullshit of what these, let's just platitude it into.
No, sadly, some of the higher end folks, especially, out east that have got the money and the means and they're putting on the galas and the shows. And, there's a certain amount of awareness being brought to it, but they're like feeding them bread and cheese and alcohol and wine. And I'm like, we have to stop using these toxic foods to help raise awareness for sick people. Like, hello, like, is this thing on? And they're leaving out a big. It's a very much a who's who and who do you know. So it's sadly getting there. Whenever there's money involved in shit, sometimes there is that chance of shit getting tarnished. Unfortunately,
exactly. Well, and it moves into this place of virtue signaling. If you feel so helpless that you're like, well, if I throw a few dollars at it, then I will feel better. I will feel like I can let my conscience rest because then that's as much as I have to give as a little bit of cash versus a little bit of really understanding, educating, empowering, and changing the narrative.
110%. Oh my gosh. Ugh, this is so much fun. I adore you. I'm like, she's already brought me to tears almost twice. I'm like, because I'm just right there with you. Like, it's just, Anywho, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to dive deeper into this co-infections in cancer and your book, The Metabolic Approach to Cancer. Because I have a feeling it's not just all about the treatment. So stay tuned. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Hey there. I used to not be able to drink coffee. I always reacted to it horribly. It hurt my stomach. It made me over jittery and would inflame me and cause histamine issues. But not anymore. Since I started drinking Danger Coffee by Dave Asprey. It's his next level of coffees. He came out with Bulletproof, and now this is the next level up. So it is mold-free, toxin-free, and he infuses it with minerals and electrolytes. So unlike other coffees, they can actually pull minerals and electrolytes from your system because it's too acidic. It actually helps replenish those. And so I don't react to it at all. I get to have my Bulletproof coffee with my MCC oil and my grass-fed butter, and I don't get the jitters, I don't get the crashes, and I love how focused and energized it makes me feel. Again, non-toxic, mold-free, infused with minerals and electrolytes. I absolutely love Danger Coffee. Make sure to check out my website, thelymeboss.com. Go to the resource section and get yours. Awesome. Welcome back. Yay, man. If you missed the first half,
you shot out of a rocket, folks.
Buckle up, buttercup.
Apologies.
You're in for a ride. So all right. Early age of 20, like part of the reason that's why I was tearing up is because I'm ridiculously empathetic and just thinking about the 20-year-old Nasha being told she's got 6 months to frickin' live. Like, holy shit. Like, there's not very many 20. That gives a person a whole different perspective on life. Like, I'm just saying. Yeah. It's a gift, right? There's things that people really can't wrap their brain around until they've had that death type sentence. So what a beautiful gift, because then now look at what you've done with your life. So let's dive deeper into that. So then after you read Deepak kind of what was your next steps?
Well, again, I kind of alluded to, I had a bowel blockage, so I was accidentally fasting, which let me just give some context of how I was eating prior to this diagnosis.
Mm-hmm.
This might play into the rest of, we had the family toxicity, also lived on 4 different Superfund sites.
Super what?
On Superfund sites, which are the EPA classification of sites that are so toxic that you have to basically remediate it for decades to come. Because I lived in a town where there were multiple Air Force bases, industry, all the airline and building like Beach, Boeing, Learjet, all of those were all in my town. All the toxic waste dump of that was there, military bases, all of those things. I lived right under a flight pattern of the Blue Angels and the military flight patterns, which tons of toxicity there. There was so much. My mom was telling me the other day, there was some other downtown Wichita, Kansas, there's something about that area. I had to go back and remember what she told me, but it was like one giant Superfund site. And, so it's just crazy of the things, just even that. But the other crazy thing of that time is because I was in poverty, because my mom, I came from a divorced family. My mom had to work multiple jobs just to keep a roof over our head. So my brother and I were officially latchkey kids. If people didn't know that, which meant we were basically babysat by Tom and Jerry, the Andy Griffith show, Three's Company, after school every day, and from that generation. And also because we were so poor, like my mom would go to those discount grocery outlets and buy these big blobs of pink meat. And it was so disgusting to me that at 16, I decided to become a vegetarian. Now, vegetarian in Wichita, Kansas, this is where my grandma.
Oh, no. I'm from Nebraska. I get it, girl.
Right, so right? I go to like a family gathering, they're like, oh, I don't eat meat. They're like, oh, well, here's some chicken then. I mean, that is literally where I grew up. My grandma one time said to me, God put cattle on the earth for a reason. And I'm like, well, I'm pretty sure he didn't put them on here to be put in these giant CAFO factory farming experiences. She was the bookkeeper for 50 years for MBPXL, which was at a different state, named differently now, but it was the largest meat packing company in the world, and not like good quality grass-fed, grass-finished meat. So it was a thing, right? Where I grew up around like watching my family of origin farmers move from, big kind of multi-crop farming to monocrop farming to being taken over by basically Monsanto. And so watched all of that turn into one giant glyphosate cesspool of my family of origin there. So I watched these things change in a period of time. And so being poor, being a latchkey kid, we also just lived on everything very processed and packaged. So it was fast. So lots of hamburger helper, on the weekends, my mom's treat was to get Dale donuts that we would smother in country crock butter.
Oh God.
I went to the microwave and heat it. So it was basically a puddle of goo and just eat it. And that was our special breakfast weekends. During the work week, we had like big loaves of really bad, cheap white bread that we would slather with country crock butter, cinnamon, and sugar. My brother and I would put down a half a loaf to a loaf a day. No wonder I didn't shit. Right. It was not until I was in medical school that I learned. Now I can understand all my symptoms was that I also have celiac disease.
Yeah. Well,
genetic is not justified. Yeah.
Right. No, but back then they had those commercials, right? This is a part of a balanced breakfast. Bullshit. That's diabetes in the making is what that is.
100%. Diabetes, mental illness. Like for me, it landed in my gut. For my brother, it landed in his brain. And
I'm celiac as well. I swear we were separated at birth.
Oh, yeah. Well,
Kansas, Nebraska,
back together, right? The bread fast. We were raised in the bread fast, right? Absolutely. And the funny thing is, in the 1940s, I go off a little tangent here. They used to call schizophrenia, which the family of origin I come from has loads of severe mental illness, not just a little depression or anxiety, not a little flavor of that. We're talking diagnosed sociopathy and hardcore borderline narcissism, like lots and lots of and schizophrenia. And so in that, they used to call schizophrenia in the 1940s bread brain.
Oh,
when you're a latchkey kid where the only thing you can afford are cheap processed carbs, it was like, no wonder my brother's mental illness got worse and worse. And no wonder my digestion and my health got worse and worse. It showed up in different parts of our bodies. Our SNPs, our single nucleotide polymorphisms probably have quite a bit of similarity, because I can look at mine and see, okay, I got some from my mom and dad, and my brother got some from mom and dad. Like we knew what we'd have. Like if I could guess his SNPs today, I would guess that he is set up for severe mental illness and these types of things to push him in that direction. Well, interesting. I bring all this together is one of the SNPs of celiac and one of the SNPs of a lot of cancering processes and one of the SNPs that is very higher incidence of co-infection expression or like ability to absorb and become more infective is the HLA SNP, which is the human leukocyte antigen SNP, which developed about 10,000 years ago in the Neolithic farming era when we started to actually put down some roots through the Mediterranean region of the world after being millennia of hunter-gatherers. And that's when that genetics first came to be. That set the tone for us to have celiac. That set the tone for us to have chronic co-infections. That set the stage for us to be very vulnerable to things like mold and viruses. And so it was kind of a vulnerability, but it also creates some other superhero powers as well. But that one side is if you became a bit more vulnerable to the environment around you. And interesting enough, that human lymphocyte antigen is also very immunogenic. And when we know that a bout of stress can really wipe out your immune system, you know that there's this intimate relationship. When I was diagnosed, I switched my gear from biochemistry and biology pre-med to psychology, biology pre-med, because I then constructed a self-created major of psychoneuroimmunology.
What a badass you are.
That's
incredible.
Before it was OG. So, that's the nature. But it was crazy of that because that's what I did realize at that moment was I knew somehow intuitively the trauma of my life led to me being vulnerable to this diagnosis at such a young age of being this zebra. That is also true of the Lyme, like you at your young age of Lyme and all these other pieces. And so the weaving together of this story, there are some common denominators that are very similar, whether it expresses as cancer or as a co-infection.
110%. That's beautiful. I tell people I don't have a detox bucket. I have a detox thimble.
Yeah.
It doesn't take much to, I am the canary in the coal mine. So yeah, I still to this day don't know how I don't have cancer. My grandmother died of breast cancer with all the things stacked against me. I was a smoker for 27 years. I quit 4 years ago.
Probably dealing with grief and loss.
Oh God. But yeah, I still don't know. And I'm not cancel. I'm not manifesting that. I'm
yes,
but I don't know
we're
how.
Just going to give it to you in this flavor of Lyme instead.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But yeah, so let's dive in deeper into the co-infections and cancer piece.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. 200,000 cases per year of cancer cases around the world every year are attributed to just Epstein-Barr virus.
Shut up.
Right?
Wow.
Just that one alone. That doesn't even count CMV, which is we're starting to learn more and more of its relationship, so cytomegalovirus, its relationship to brain tumors. GBMs in particular. We're starting to find, we know like H. pylori is a bacterial infection of the gut that leads to gastric cancers, esophageal cancers. We know that Epstein-Barr also is very associated with lymphomas, leukemias, multiple myelomas. We know that there's just like a ton of these sarcoma or squamous cell carcinomas. So of the rectum, of the throat, of the cervix, this is HPV, right? This is a virus. So, from the studies I've read and from my understanding is depending which literature you're looking at, upwards of 35% of all cancers have a co-infection underpinning.
That totally makes sense. I can believe that. 110%.
When you think about the immune system, I'll use an example here, like a teeter-totter. The immune system is sort of a teeter-totter, right? So we've got the center post, which I call the T helper cells or the T regulatory cells. On one end, you've got Th1, T helper cell 1, and on the other end, Th2. Infections, allergies, cancer, they're all Th2 dominant. Okay. Autoimmunity, reactivity to your environment is Th1 dominant. So some of us can be Th1 dominant. Some of us can be Th2 dominant. Woohoo! Some of us can just have the pen fly out of your hand. Some of us can be both dominant, which was my dance. Okay. Some of us can be both completely suppressed. So what happens there is if you end up in one end of the spectrum long enough, if you're hanging out there because, hey, I had allergies as a kid, and then I ended up with Lyme disease in my young adulthood or Epstein-Barr, and then ended up with cancer in my 20s, 30s, or 40s, you've just been moving down the same path in the same part of the teeter-totter for a very long time. And the irony today is in standard of care, our biggest blockbuster treatment of this is using a drug known as a checkpoint inhibitor to push your teeter-totter hardcore into Th1 dominance. Okay, it's like, let's flip the switch over here. Let's overreact it. Now, that is a problem because then people can end up with autoimmunity so terrible. They're like, great, the cancer's gone, but I can never eat again because the gastritis is so bad, or my thyroid is totally destroyed, or my liver, or my kidneys, or my lungs.
My brain.
That's not a quality of, yeah. And so what we need is a nuance. Like, let's look at the center of that teeter-totter. Let's modulate, let's balance, let's restore the homeostasis of this process, because you need both. And you need both at different things, at different times. And they are the checks and balancing to each other. And so to your point, like when folks come in and like, oh, here's cancer, we're going to napalm the crap out of it, chemo, radiation, surgery, targeted therapies, endocrine therapies, whatever. Same thing with something like Lyme's. We're going to napalm the field. We're just going to throw a year's worth of antibiotics to it. Well, both those strategies, known as the maximum tolerated dose strategy, is a really, really antiquated failure of treatment. Okay. Because great, you might take out the organism, whether it's cancer cells.
You're taking everything else out as well.
Exactly. And you make the environment more vulnerable.
Yeah.
Which is, you spoke to, like, why do we have recurrences over and over of whatever, or re-expressions of the illness or whatever? Because we are not fixing the problem.
It frustrates me because they talk about, I'm having an autoimmune flare, I'm having a Lyme flare. Like, it might be common, but again, it's not normal, right? Like, I have not had a flare since I put Lyme in remission over 3 years ago.
Ooh,
right? Like,
yeah.
Because I've been working on this nervous system stuff, right? Really getting this calm.
You can't even receive a pharmaceutical well if you're in a stressed, revving environment.
Yeah.
Right. So that's where, to me, it's so fascinating that we have such strong evidence of, it's like, so that's the other thing is, if I have a patient come to me with cancer, part of my job is to evaluate what the trigger was. Like, you asked me, what were my big triggers? I believe my triggers were trauma first. I think that was the biggest. Secondary was malnutrition, because I'd eaten so latchkey kid. And then I decided to become a vegetarian at 16. And at 16, then my idea of vegetarianism was molasses pickles and white bread and Velveeta cheese.
Oh, good God.
Okay. There was some iceberg lettuce in there sometimes. Every once in a while I get the hankering for my favorite sandwich of that time, which was Wonder Bread. Had to be that type with Miracle Whip. It couldn't be regular. Miracle Whip with thin sliced sweet pickle, molasses pickle. So dead, not even raw organic pickles, with Velveeta cheese. That's not even cheese. It's a plasticizer with iceberg lettuce. I'm like, my mouth starts to water because there's such a memory to it. That tang, it's like, oh my God. Like, I probably ate that every day for years. And then the funniest thing is, when I was 13, I started working at Hot Dog on a Stick.
Oh, nice.
At my local mall. And because we were so poor, that was where I had my square meal. So my square meals were, and because I was vegetarian, I was doing the
corn dog. Mine was a Dairy Queen.
There you go. Right. So I was doing cheese sticks and like a big gulp of cherry limeade or lemonade every single day. Gross. So metabolic, broken, malnourished. And then it just gets even better.
Wait, there's more.
Exactly. Like the layers of that. My family's idea of a vegetable was cans of creamed corn or green beans, neither of which are a vegetable. And then tomatoes were the other vegetable, which that is not a vegetable. So I was in this place when I started dating my boyfriend, now husband. He would take my boxed mac and cheese and like cut up little bell peppers and little bits of broccoli in it. And I would cry. I'm like, you ruined my mac and cheese. You're right. It's like this crazy. It's like for people to think the way I eat today, they're like, oh, you must have always eaten that way. No.
I have a bit that says the old me would kick the new me's ass.
Oh my God. The old me. It's crazy. Like, it's crazy how far we've come with our knowledge. And so I was so malnourished that by the time my cancer came along, anything I was going to do was going to help. Literally eating nothing is probably what saved my life.
Oh my
Fasting is
God.
probably what saved my life, because I was putting so much toxic, hard to digest things completely against my genetics. That HLA was raging. Now I understood, my IBS is actually celiac disease. My rheumatoid arthritis is actually celiac disease. My polycystic ovarian syndrome and endometriosis is actually celiac disease. My Hashimoto's autoimmune thyroiditis is actually celiac disease. Like all of these things happening that I was not feeding myself for what my genetics needed and what my body needed to rest and restore and repair. And so that's the trick here, is when patients come to me now with cancer, we start to dig in, like, what is your main priorities? What are the main drivers for you? And so we evaluate for that. And one of the things of the 10 drops in the bucket we evaluate for is all in the immune drop in the bucket, which is also evaluating for co-infections and chronic illnesses. Because that is weirdly never looked at, despite me telling you that 35+% of all cancers have this. No one's looking at it except for someone crazy like me.
Oh my gosh.
And so if I can get your cancer into remission, but I am still not going after your Lyme or your Epstein-Barr, these things, it's only a matter of time before the cancer and the condition is coming back with a vengeance.
Absolutely.
You do, as I said earlier, you cannot heal from the soil in which you got sick. So you have to be willing to excavate, to get curious, to dig deeper and find out what is driving this horse and pony show.
It's so sad all the time. People, when can I go back to eating blah, blah, blah? When can I go back to doing da, da, da? And I go,
if you want to go back to how it was, you just jump right in.
Right.
You don't ever get to go back to that.
No.
Unless you want to go back to that.
Right.
And that's hard for people to hear.
It is.
Because today don't we eat today? Like even today now, the way I eat, there's a DSM code for me now. People are like, oh, that's orthorexia. That she's really worried about what she's putting into her body. I'm like, well, let's see here. It takes a lot of effort to find things that are close to what your grandparents ate on the planet today.
Right. That aren't toxic. Like it's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. And it costs more.
Yep.
Right. Although we're changing that. We're working really hard with regenerative organic farmers all over this globe. That's one of my other passion projects. It's like, let's bring the farmers to the physicians and the physicians to the farmers, and the patients win across the board. That's where we're going. You got it.
That's incredible. Goosebumps. So let's talk a little bit about your book, Metabolic Approach to Cancer. So when was that written? And just kind of give us just a few little tidbits from that. Yeah,
sure. So this book was born out of, I used to do cancer retreats, and these patients at the end of, we started on a Friday afternoon, finish on a Monday morning. I'd have them all test their labs before coming in. I'd have them test a week later. They would see the transformation. They would feel the transformation. And they're like, there's so much information coming our way. It's like drinking water out of a fire hydrant. You need to put this into a book. Because of my schedule, I was booked out a year in advance, seeing patients from all over the world with cancer. My co-author, Jess Kelly, was my nutritionist in my office at that time. And she's like, I can help. Let's do this. Let's get this out there. So she and I finished the manuscript just before Thanksgiving of 2016. And it went into publication and out to the masses in May of 2017. Blows my mind that it's been this many years. It's still in the top 10 of all oncology books on Amazon all these years later. And every time I do a talk like this or something else, we hop up to number one every time. It's still very relevant. I now train clinicians and advocates all over the globe. We're in 36 countries now and reached over 600 people in our trainings, that even where what has changed or what has been nuanced since that book came out are easy to teach into the community and share on podcasts and whatnot. But really that information holds true. It held true for the 20 some years prior to me writing that book, and it will hold true. There's just some foundational right. And so that's where that is. And the element, I alluded to, like these drops in the bucket, that's what the book is about. It starts out with a quiz. We actually have, I'll make sure in your show notes, we get you the updated, modernized, expanded version of the quiz that people can access themselves, take themselves, and really understand what is driving their show. Cancer or not, Lyme, whatever. My husband said it's unfortunate the book got called The Metabolic Approach to Cancer, because it really should be called The Metabolic Approach to Life, or to health, or prevention, or to wellness. So you could put any word in that. But basically this questionnaire gets you a starting point of going, okay, what are my priorities? Then you could go right ahead and read about, okay, of the 10 drops in the bucket, these are my priorities. So for instance, epigenetics, metabolism, toxic exposure, microbiome, immune system, inflammation, oxygen, circulation, perfusion, hormone balance, circadian rhythm and stress response. And the fifth drop is mental and emotional. For me, mental emotional probably should have been number one, but most people, if I started there, they'd close that book and walk away. So I lead them into the tangibles first. And then once you've turned over those stones and you realize, wow, I'm either all better or, hey, I'm still not better. That's when it's time to.
Right.
Yeah.
Amen.
So it's a tool, it's a guide. It's, you can read it from front to back, but it's meant to really be a self-evaluation and a resource for you and your loved ones on this journey.
That's absolutely brilliant. I love it. I love it. I love it so much. And where can people find you? Where can people find the book?
Cool. Please. Probably best place, there's two, but the best place would be to mtih.org. That stands for Metabolic Terrain Institute of Health.org. On there, you'll get access. You'll find out about the book, Metabolic Approach to Cancer. You'll find out about my other book, Mistletoe and the Future of Integrative Oncology. You'll find links back to my website, Dr. Nasha, drnasha.com, which also takes you down like the hundreds of podcasts I've been a part of. I also have my own podcast that launched 10/10 of 2023 on Metabolic Health Day, World Metabolic Health Day. So put that on your calendar for next year. And that is called Metabolic Matters. So you can find the recordings I've done there. We'll get you on there one of these days, Heather.
I was just going to say, I'm like, I want to play with you.
Do it. So metabolicmatters.org. You can also learn about all of our initiatives. So from opening a lab and research institute, building an integrative oncology and chronic illness hospital on a 1,200-acre organic regenerative farm, our education platform, our data platform. We're busy. Our plan is just to change the world. Call me crazy. I think, like you said earlier, like clearly, cancer was a message, gave you something you needed to do with this information. And I really do not take it for granted that I am a miracle. There should be no reason why I'm here today. And yet here I am. And so I'm going to absolutely take advantage of every single second of my life on this planet to make a difference.
Amen. Oh my God. Can I get a hallelujah? Everybody, hopefully you got something out of this. If one little nugget you learned, please make sure you share, like, and subscribe, because that is how we get this message out to the masses. That is how we create change, not by keeping this to ourselves, making us, the best kept secret. Spread the word, folks. And make sure to stay tuned. Thanks for joining me. Have a healthy day. If you learned anything, even one little nugget in any episode, please do not keep us a secret. Like, share, subscribe, and leave a review on Apple, on Spotify. That is how we get this information out there, and we change this paradigm one person at a time. I can't do it by myself. I need your help. Also, make sure to know that disclaimer, anything that you hear on this, you cannot hold Discovering Health LLC, Renegade Health Boss, The Line Boss, or Heather Gray liable for anything. Always consult your doctor before doing anything new. Do not take this as medical advice. This is your disclaimer. And then also, if you want to know the foundations of health, right? All that I talk about on how I get healthy, the absolute foundation: sleep, diet, exercise, what to eat, toxins, how to detox mold, all of it. You can get it in your own course at rhbcourses.com, right? Start your healing journey today, as little as $79. Start today, rhbcourses.com. Stay tuned, and thanks for joining us.